And that's on. Is on the green?
On the green.
Green's okay.
Green's right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, for the old days of just taking the Bible and preaching. Forget the technology. Well, appreciate the opportunity to take a few moments this afternoon and just share a little bit with you about the work in Cardwell. Pastor Davis rang me and told me that I'd have 15-20 minutes. Basically, the time was mine. I could do what I want. Bring a devotional or share some things about Cardwell, photos, pictures, whatever. And I thought what I would do, I knew there would be a lot of good preaching, so we really didn't need more of that. But I thought maybe what I would do is just take some time this afternoon and by way of some pictures and things, give you a little bit of the history of the community that the Lord has led my wife and I and family to minister in for 30 years, next April, 29 now, and give you a picture of that, and then take, after that, a couple of minutes and just share a couple of points of application from two verses in the Bible. So if you come from the south and travel to Cardwell, we're located right on the coast, about halfway between, as many of you know, halfway between Kansas and Townsville. You'll come to this sign about 2 kilometers out of town. And as I say, our town is just a small coastal town. There's about 1,500 people in it, about 4,000 or 5,000 in the district that we can draw from. It was in 1985 that the Lord led my wife Debbie and I to come to Cardwell. I actually grew up in a pastor's home, was saved when I was 8 years old, and from the time when I was in grade 1 or 2, I knew the Lord wanted me to be a pastor overseas. I just knew that as a little child, and of course it was a child's concept. It grew over the years. So when I went to Bible college, it wasn't a matter of what the Lord wanted me to do, it was a matter of where. And all of the years that I was in Bible college, I prayed about that. And when I came to the conclusion of that, my wife and I were married, the Lord led us to consider coming to North Queensland. We didn't know Brother Wally at the time, but we contacted him, and through his encouragement and their church, eventually we, in 1985, were able to come to the community of Cardwell. There had been some groundwork done in Cardwell. I'll refer to this later as well when I make a point of application. Initially, there had been a little groundwork done in Cardwell by the church in Ingham. Brother Wally's church is about 35 minutes south of us. And over the past few years, once or twice a year, they would come up and pass tracts out, show a gospel film. Glenn Weeks came up and preached a couple of times, maybe a one-night off type thing. So there was a little bit of groundwork that was done. And when we arrived, there was a lady on the right there and a couple of children that helped begin the work with us. They stayed with us for about 6 months, and then because of some previous problems before we came, then they ceased to come. But we began as Cardwell Baptist Fellowship. And over the next few years, the Lord added 2, along with our family and 4 children, the Lord added 2 other key families. And with 3 families, one of them having 6 children, another one having 6 children, and I having 4 children, we had instant church. So we got off to a good start that way. And it was in 1990, years after we began, that we constituted with 6 members. One of those has gone to the lady on the left. Brother Dale Butler's wife has gone to be with the Lord. And the others have moved away, but the Lord has over the years then added to us, and we have other folk that come along now. The first few years of our ministry, we met in a Cardwell State School, and during that time we saved our money, trying to find a piece of property where we could eventually serve the Lord and minister there in Cardwell, build a church for Him. And it was in 1995 the Lord led us to an acre of property just on the north edge of Cardwell. We purchased that property and began again to meet on it in a small demountable building, 6 by 12 demountable building that was there. During that time, we were able to pay cash for the property, and during that time, then we saved our money, and about 2 years later, in 1996, end of 1996, we had Building Fund Sunday, and I just asked the folk to pray. It was the only I mentioned it one time. I said I put that sign up, and that bulletin board, and I just asked the folk to pray on this Sunday in 2 months. We're going to have Building Fund Sunday. You give whatever the Lord wants you to give. And if there's money there, we'll go ahead. If there's not, we'll just keep saving. That's all we said for 2 months. 2 months later, we had an offering. There was enough money to begin a building. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that, a couple shots. I just want to emphasize this picture. If you look at those people, the people in that photo paid cash for the property and the building. There was only about $2,000 that came from outside of our church to construct this building. They paid everything. And when we got done, we owed nothing over the next 2 years. But some of the work we had to hire out, we weren't able to do, but we were able to do a lot of it ourselves, a lot of the roof work and all the timber work and the sheetrock and things like that. And at the end of that time in 1998, we were able to move into this beautiful little facility, not large, but enough for Cardwell. And actually, Pastor Brian Wenham came up, and he was a special speaker for our dedication Sunday on that occasion. Of course, the Lord has added other individuals to us, and you'll notice in this photo there are a number of young people, and most of those young people have now grown up. They've gone off to uni, they've gotten married. So basically, we're left with all us old folk. But we're still there and laboring for the Lord. In 2009, we had our 20th anniversary there, and you might even see the crows in that picture. They were there for that day. But that was a wonderful occasion when we could rejoice in what the Lord had done over the years. The building is located right on the Bruce Highway, right on the main road. Some of you have been to the Martins, and others have come up through and been with us. But we're located right there on the main highway. That's the kind of property we wanted so that we could advertise the building for the Lord. And on the main property, of course, we have, or on the property, main building that has a small auditorium in it, not, of course, as large as yours. But it's sufficient for the community there that we have and the ministry the Lord's given to us. We also have a small fellowship hall where we can have meals and games and things of that nature on rainy days. Also to the back of the building, we have this demountable building where we originally began. We use it now for Sunday school and youth work, storage, things like that. And then we also have a large, probably half-acre field that we use for our Friday evening youth group. Community outreaches, things of that nature as well. Of course, the similar kinds of ministries that you have, we have Sunday school, but this is my wife here, by the way, teaching. But we've also tried to use the Sunday school as an opportunity to mentor some of the young people. Cardwell has no industry. We don't have any university. We have nothing to hold young people when they get older. And so our basic premise and our view has been all of those young people from those 3 families or 4 families that we've known all of these years, they would go off. We just wouldn't keep them. There was nothing there. So our desire has been to try to train them, mentor them, and then when they go off to some other church, at least they can step in and say, hey, I've taught Sunday school, I've done this, I've done that, and be able to try to help with the ministry there. And of course, using some of the other men as well there in the Sunday school. We have the RE classes in the public school. We have 6 RE classes, and we're able to teach whatever we want. They're country schools, so we're not bound by a curriculum or anything. And my wife teaches one. I teach a couple. The gentleman before, Brother Gordon Bola, teaches some as well. We've also used after-school Bible clubs, not only ones that I or my wife conduct, but some of the folk in the church also have a weekly Bible club at an Aboriginal community about 30 minutes north of us that they use there, and their family has that. Friday Evening Youth Group is something that we have, probably much like you do, and it's basically an outreach for young people. We have, of course, our church young folk that come along. They're kind of a renter crowd, always got somebody there, but trying to reach out to the community young folk. Because, and you can see the field here that the Lord gave to us on the property, and so over the last few years, probably for 10, maybe 15 years now, in November we've had a large Super Saturday. Our church is located about halfway between our sister churches to the north and the south. We're located about right in the middle of where all of our churches are up there. And so we've used that property, for instance, in November. We've had a large all-day youth outreach from 10 to 4. Super Saturday, Coke and Pepsi teams divide them up, have sports and activities throughout the day, and then at the end of the time have an hour-long service. And I've been able to do that. Wonderful ministries the Lord has led my wife and I into, works in conjunction with the camping program that Brother Wally's church has, where Brother Pete Blake is at. A number of years ago, my wife and I began the Teens in Training program, TNT, whereby with the junior week of camp, some of the senior young folk can come back. They make application for us, a 5-page application, fill that out. If they're accepted into the program, they come back for a week-long kind of an intense leadership training program for them. They work in conjunction with the junior campers and things of that nature. And of course, here they are before the junior campers. We try to involve them in the program and in the camping program, not only with Bible programs and get guest speakers in, like Brother Wally. We flew him in from Ingham, a distance of about 10 minutes. Okay, but that's probably appropriate. His van's usually flying anyway. He's here and there and yon all over the place. But Brother George Matsko, who's been here, we have him speak. We get some of the other men to speak. We have Bible training time for them, as well as some servanthood opportunities, some leadership times, and things of that nature. Over the years in Cardwell, we've also tried from time to time, probably only every 4 or 5 years, but we'll have for a year long maybe a Monday evening Bible class, where maybe there's some of the young folk that want some more intense type training, and sometimes I'll speak or we'll use a video type presentation, some things by Jim Berg or something like that. Two ministries that I want to mention that you might be familiar with, or some of the men here will be familiar with. One is in 2001, the Lord led Brother Wally and I to begin this publication, Wellsprings, a Wellsprings ministry. This grew out of my experience with my dad, I guess I could say. My father was a pastor, and he pastored little churches out in the middle of nowhere. When I was a boy, the closest other pastoral fellowship was probably 4 or 5 hours away from him. And he labored for years and years and years just in a very dry area spiritually. And when I entered the ministry, became concerned for men like that, who, even men in a city, you can be in a city and still be on your own, so to speak, but became, burden for men just needing, like my father, just needed some inspiration, just knowing, hey, there's somebody else out there besides yourself. So we began a 16-page publication we send out 4 times a year free of charge to probably 150, 160 pastors throughout the country. It's designed for pastors. We put articles in there for these men, outlines, and book reviews and articles on the ministry, things like that, just to be an inspiration to men like my father. Many of the men throughout the country probably have other sources of inspiration, and that's good, that's fine. But there's probably men out there like my dad, and just a little something would be an encouragement to them. So we use that for them, send it out 4 times a year. About 2 years after we began the Wellsprings publication, I also began having a burden for helping pastors and Christian leaders throughout the country to have the proper kinds of resources in order to study the Bible. You ladies can relate to that. You can imagine being in your kitchen and having 1 spoon and 1 knife and 1 bowl. And I mean, I'm not a cook. Maybe you can cook a meal with that. I don't know. But I'm thinking, as an individual who eats the meals, that it would probably be limited and would satisfy for a little bit of time, but you'd probably need more than that. And it's the same with the preacher. He needs tools as well. It was C.H. Spurgeon who said, he called these men a wiseacre. He said, many preachers want people to come on Sunday and sit under their table and be fed, but during the week they won't sit under another man's table. In other words, they don't have tools for whatever the reason. And we became burdened to try to help men, particularly men like my father, who had to work. My dad painted barns and houses to support our family when I was young, and would work 5 days a week, 12-hour days, painting, and then try to do church work. It was very hard on him. And finances weren't around for tools, so I understood that. And so we began this ministry. I wrote to the major book publishers. They gave us the book discounts, a retail discount. We import all the books, and we sell them all at cost. So, by the way, any books you buy from the book table over there, they're all at cost. We make nothing on them. We actually underwrite the ministry. We paid all the shipping to get those books down there. We pay all the packaging materials. Sometimes I will discount books. People don't know that, but I'll knock $1 or $2 off what we actually paid for them because it was a commentary. It's a $40 commentary. We'll sell it for $30. I do that often, and we'll pay the $10 ourselves because men out there don't have a lot of money, and so we're trying to help men get the tools they need in order to really be able to labor effectively for the Lord. So in conjunction with Wellsprings, 4 times a year, we send out the mail order book catalog that you saw in the previous picture, and men can order from that. And or then we take the books to conferences like this, the MDF, different places like that where we can try to sell them. But our burden is to try to help these men. Our resource in Cardwell is not people. We only have in the community probably 1,500 right within the community. And we're not like Grafton, we're not like Coffs Harbor, we're not like Sydney where there's always another door you can knock on. We're just working with the same people all the time. Our resource is not people, our resource is time. I don't have to do a lot of pastoral visitation, I don't have to do hospital visitation. With a smaller church, I don't have to do a lot of counseling. So I have time, not a lot of it, but I've got some. And what the Lord has enabled us to do through that time is to undergird the ministries of people like you. If I could put it in the terms of Mike Coughlin, and this is the one thing I always remember about Brother Mike. Many times over the years he said, you know what? He says, I just want to be the guy that carries the ammo. Let somebody else be on the front line shooting the gun. I'll just bring the ammo to him and let him do the shooting. And that's a little bit like what we feel like as a church. Our ministry is a supportive ministry. We don't have a lot of people, but we can support ministries like yours or in some of the larger cities. We can carry the ammo. You guys do the shooting. We'll just keep feeding it to you if you'll let us. And give you some, if you want water, we'll send you water. We got a lot of that in North Queensland. But we just want to undergird you and try to help with that. And the book ministry is one way that we can do that. Of course, much of this, obviously, we've had to draw the resources on. And over the years, we've had different illustrative preachers come up and different individuals that have come up to try to preach for us and help us. Of course, Brother Davies has come. Brother Robert Apps, you recognize. Brother Mitchell came up. He's been up a couple times. I think Brother Davies has been up a couple times. But we used to have youth conferences. I didn't show you a picture of that, but we had youth conferences once a year for 3 days. Invite a lot of the other churches. Brother Zeus has been up as well a couple of times. Brother Glenn Matthews. Other people, Gavin Jacob, but I didn't put their picture in here because I didn't think they'd be here. I wanted these men to be up front too. So, but Brother Wayne Zimmerman, Brother Gavin Jacob, different individuals like that have also been up and ministered for us up there, and it's been a blessing to have them. The Lord, over the years, my wife and I have been in Cardwell. The Lord's given us 4 children. They were all born in North Queensland. David, the oldest, Andrew, Daniel, and then Sarah. Of course, this picture's older now, and David is now married to Naomi. Her parents were, when she was a young child, they were missionaries in France. She grew up there and has a heart for overseas types work. David's working on an advanced degree in Bible, and they'll be returning to Australia to pastor here in the country somewhere. They have a little boy, Caleb, and they're expecting another little boy in 2 weeks. Andrew is our second son, and he and Megan have been married a little over a year. They just have a little son now, Seth, that's about 4 months old. He's also working on an advanced degree in Bible, teaching Greek at the Bible College there, and again wants to return to Australia to pastor and possibly have an extension kind of ministry in Southeast Asia, helping the mission works up there and teaching in some of their Bible colleges. Daniel on the left is working on a master's degree in church music and hopes to serve the Lord with his musical ability, kind of a piano guru. He loves that kind of work. And then Sarah on the right is just starting her 2nd year in teaching and is looking forward to serving the Lord, working with children and things of that nature. But thank you over the years that I've been able to come down and be part of your work here. Thank you for praying for us, and let me encourage you to continue to do that as we pray for you. But a blessing, as I say, to have your pastor and others come up and for us to get to know you so we can pray for you better, and would ask that you pray for us as well. 2 minutes I've got. Let me just share 2 verses with you by way of application and in light of what the presentation that I've given. The first one is in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, if you'll turn there with me. Book of 1 Corinthians chapter 3. I want to just draw your attention to one phrase in verse number 10. The Apostle Paul writes, and he says, according to the grace of God which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, now note, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. For a number of years, I've been under the impression that the work that the Ingham Church did before our coming to Cardwell was probably the first work ever done in Cardwell. And recently, through Brother Glenn Weeks and others, I've come in contact with a lady up here in Brisbane. Some of you know her, Nora Anderson, who, when she was 5 years old, unconverted family, that her family came to Cardwell, and there were some traveling evangelists. Mr. Moss and his wife were their names. And they went through every house in Cardwell and gave out New Testaments to all the children. Nora and her family were on holiday in one of the caravan parks. She was 5 years old. Her family was unconverted, really didn't think much about God. She got a New Testament. Here's her testimony. There's a picture of her and her New Testament. And it was that New Testament that eventually led her on a journey that brought her to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And Friday, when Brother Wally and I came down, we went up to her. She lives in Kippering now. We went up there, spent an hour with her, talked with her. She has a great heart for children. She's been ministering to hundreds of children all of her life, giving out wherever she goes now. She keeps Bibles, these New Testaments with her, and she gives them out to kids all over the country, wherever she goes. And that came about because of a man by the name of Mr. Moss. And Mr. Moss and his wife used to travel around in that 1927 Chevrolet Gospel van. And on the back, it's a picture of that van in Cardwell. And Mr. and Mrs. Moss have labored giving out New Testaments to every house in Cardwell, every house in Ingham, every house in Tully, the three communities, and they never have known that Nora Anderson got saved and has led multiple other children to the Lord. She built on their foundation. But when we came to Cardwell, I didn't know of her and I didn't know of the Mosses. We're only building, my wife and I and our family and our church are only building on the foundations that have been laid over the years by other people. We're simply standing on the shoulders of other men and other individuals. And I don't know where the Lord's going to lead all of you, particularly you young people, but wherever God does, you be faithful in the ministry God gave to you. You may not see and ever know that someone comes to Christ. But you be faithful, because in 20 or 30 or 40 years, someone else might come along and build on the foundation you lay and be able to do a wonderful work for the Lord. There may be a church in that area someday because of your faithfulness and someone else be able to stand on your shoulders and build on your shoulders. And the other verse I draw our attention to by way of application is 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 17. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 17. And by the way, on Friday we went to Nora got us in touch with the guy who owns this restored Chevy van, 1927. It's restored up in Brisbane. We went and saw it, and saw the platform that folds down out of the van. The guy used to stand on the platform, and his wife used to play a little organ. You can just envision that, this fellow pulling up in an old pioneer city and standing on that platform and hollering about the Lord to people. And I could kick myself now for not standing on the platform, getting myself a picture on that thing, but I didn't. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 17. And if you call on the Father, okay, so do you call on the Father? Is He your Father? All right, now look. Who without respect of persons judgeth according to every man's work. Now, do you believe that? You call on the Father, He's your Father. Do you believe there's coming a day of accountability when He's going to judge every man's work? We believe that, right? If that be true, then pass the time of your sojourning here in fear or in reverence. And it's just like what Brother Wally, it just fit amazingly, it's just like what Brother Glenn and Brother Matthews and Brother Wally were preaching today. We need to be serious about our work for the Lord. And we need to be faithful in the place God has placed us and He has put us. There's coming a day of accountability. And what we need to do in this life is to pass our time here, our sojourning. We're simply pilgrims. We need to pass our time here in reverence for God and the things that really count in life. This is supposed to be a missions presentation, so let me just encourage you to be faithful where God puts you geographically. Because that's what I'm talking about here, geographically. We're thinking about Cardwell. We're thinking about missionaries going to New Guinea. And we wouldn't be happy with a missionary who hops from New Guinea this year, and next year he's in Solomon Islands, and next year he's in Vanuatu, and next year, in other words, geographically, he's just all over the countryside. want a guy who's faithful, sure, in the ministry, doctrinal integrity, okay, things of that nature, faithful in his convictions, but we're thinking about geography, Cardwell. We want our missionaries to be faithful geographically and pass their time of the sojourning here reverentially because of the future. But why would we limit geographical stability just to the missionaries? Why can't it be that God's people and God's young people say, hey, you know, Grafton is where God put me, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to stay here. This is where I'll die. And they feel a conviction and a compulsion to stay within a community and within a church and spend their life in that community. That's their mission field. Now, true, God moves people on. Sometimes people are out of employment. They've got to move on. They have to find employment. Let me balance that out. I'm not just off on left wing here. But I think sometimes people look, they get a job, ANZ Bank, they want to keep moving up the corporate ladder. Well, if God moves you like Joseph, that's fine. What happens to our geographical conviction and keeping a church going into the next generation and the next generation and the next generation? In Adelaide, how many churches are there that are closed now? I don't know the history of all of those. Surely there must have been some good, strong Christian people in there. And if they would stay, and I'm just surmising a little bit, but if they would stay and be faithful and make that community their mission field, make Grafton their mission field. Make Coffs Harbour their mission field. As far as I know, we're going to get married. We're staying right here in Coffs Harbour. We're not going anywhere. If God wants us to, He'll have to put a bomb under us. And we're going to stay right here. This is our mission field, just as the Curls have their mission field. And we're going to labor in this community. Cardwell's our place. Ingham's our place. Grafton's our mission field. Coffs Harbour's our mission field. And we're going to stay there and spend and be spent in that community for the Lord. And labor with Him, with the man God sends there. We're going to hand in glove and do a wonderful work for God in that community. So thank you for a little bit of time to share what the Lord's doing in Cardwell. Come visit. I can throw that out because it's so far north, no one comes anyway. But do come. We enjoy having you, and thanks for praying for us, brother.